next stock, can we talk about UPS? Because I know you're tracking the transports, and I wonder if how UPS is doing today with that positive economic news. It's going up a little bit, and UPS has gone down a lot. I mean, this is a in my mind a very respected business. It's a consistent business. It's an important business, and has been sold off quite drastically, 36%. And I think the turnaround is pretty much kind of set. I think they've had some rough years. We're going to look at their fundamentals, but I think this stock's looking good to me. It's a $70 billion market cap. Revenues are higher than their market cap, and their PE ratio is quite rational, 12.38 on the current year, 12.79 forward. Analysts think it's discounted, and they pay a really high dividend. So that is interesting. So over the trailing 12 months, they're growing a tiny bit. They've had 2 positive quarters, 2 negative quarters, but they're pretty much kind of flat. If they could start to just grow single digit, I think we're going to be fine, because this is a very consistent business. The economic data is painting a picture that the economy is actually doing okay. Consumers are buying stuff. They're going online, ordering stuff, and probably using more UPS services. So that, I think the story on the economy for the next couple of years is setting it up well to probably support UPS in its growth. The free cash flows have been better in the past, but they're down a little bit. Even though they're not doing great, they're still a cash flow generator. And gross margins are low because they provide services. They're just delivering packages. They're still profitable. I think they could get better at that. And their free cash flow is a little low for the year, but it's been higher in the past. So we have dividend is pretty expensive, $6.54, where cash flow is $4.15 for the current trailing 12 months. In last year, you could say they could barely afford it, but I think that dividend is likely going to be cut, I would think, because they're trying to turn things around. The dividend is too high. I'm not a big dividend investor. I don't mind a dividend, but I'd rather have a really strong business. And if UPS can strengthen themselves by keeping that cash and just helping grow the business, get more customers to use UPS, I think that'd be better for everybody long term. Let's see what analysts are saying about UPS. So the most optimistic analyst is at a price target of $147 per share. Stock price is trading at 83. And the worst case scenario analyst is at 75. 17 opinions being provided on this stock. So the downside isn't too bad. Upside looks pretty darn good. So that looks good. Let's see what the forecast is. So this is what I like about UPS is it's not about where they've been. That is important, but it's about where they're going. And if they're going to start growing, I want to be a UPS stockholder, because I think the market's going to recognize, hey, look at the expanded profitability and really low PE. This stock's going to really set itself up well. And I want to be in the stock while it rallies. So before I show my valuation, did you want to share the charts on UPS?
Yeah, we can take a look at what we drew up here a week or two ago. So the changes from this chart compared to what I normally show is I've changed the 20-day moving average to a 21-day exponential moving average, and I use that when I'm thinking about adding to a stock or initiating a holding. It's currently trading below that. So one of its first challenges is to at least get above that 21 day and have that start turning positive. I did add a few shares here 2 or 3 days ago. Then we added these trend lines, a shorter term trend line tied to the peak in January down across this top. So the 50-day would be a little bit of resistance, and this trend line is going to be a little bit of resistance, but I'd love to see it break out above this trend line to show that it is getting positive momentum and reversing this lower highs trend. Then we have another trend line that goes back even further. Let me see how far I drew that trend line. It's pretty long. This one goes all the way back to July of 2023. So this is really when that trend line started to form. So now I'm going to go back out to a year, and to break that 3-year trend line would need to break above this dotted line I have here. So that's at about 114. So I'm going to watch this one patiently. I'm not going to, make it not going to add aggressively to it, but I'm going to be watching this one. You mentioned the major indexes. So transportation is one of those major indexes. And we showed this last week. And the one thing that changed this week, looking at a 1-week view, is transportation moved to the top of the indexes as far as performance. That's the first time this has happened this year. So if we go back 1 month, transportation was at the bottom. If we go back 6 months, transportation was at the bottom. We go back year to date, transportation was at the bottom. So this is the first week that I'm really seeing transportations start to get a bump. So as long as the market thinks the economy is weakening, then your supply chain slows down. You don't have to move as much stuff around, and the pricing in those that are in that line of work are going to suffer. So now that we're starting to get more positive news that the GDP and what have you is growing, people are starting to buy back into the transportations, which could be good for UPS and FedEx and any others that are in this line of business.
Yeah, the situation is improving for UPS and transports. I think the economic news is probably the biggest part of, the story. Is if the economy does well and people are buying stuff, they're going to do well. So that makes sense. All right. So let me take a look at the valuation of UPS, and then we'll kind of close out UPS and move on to a request. So UPS, based on my research, I conclude that it's 40% discounted. Each share is worth $138 a share. And right now the market's selling shares for $83.44. The cash flows are good. They're guiding. They provided this guidance. They're guiding that the free cash flow is going to come in actually higher than 5.5 billion. And I'm using that and then growing it. We saw that their forecast is for them to grow. So that's good. And I'm not growing by like leaps and bounds. It's just a little bit. And then long-term growth at 4%. It's a really good business, 8% discount rate. So when I use that, I get a discount of 38%. And earnings per share is actually a little better, 43% discount based on the earnings per share that they're guiding on. So, or I should say that analysts are forecasting. So I think it's a really nice risk reward situation. I'm buying into UPS. I'm establishing a good position. There's a couple of things that go through my head when I invest is what's my confidence level? How much do I believe in the business? How high do I think the stock's going to go? How much am I risking? If it's a business that is relatively young, unproven, hasn't it hasn't been, in other words, a veteran of their industry, then I have less confidence. And you think about it, is a young business, it's great to see them grow, but maybe the established competitors are going to figure out how to beat them and how to take away their market share. That's a risk. There's a lot of things that play out in my confidence level. As I look at UPS, they've been around for 100 years. Yeah, they've seen booming economies, recessions. They've seen wars. They've seen 9/11. They've seen COVID. They pretty much have seen it all. And there they are, doing what they've been doing for 100 years. Culture is good. So I just need them to be UPS, and I think the stock's going to perform quite well. Having said that, it's the kind of stock that I'm very comfortable putting a big position on because I think it's just going to perform well. It's going to do 15, 20% rate of return for the next 5 years. And I'll be good with that. I'll be like, great. It's a good place to put capital. And I'll take chances as well with some lesser known names that could really, really accelerate the growth of my capital, but they come with risks. Some of those end up being big giant losers. And that's part of the game, right? How much risk are we going to take? So that's my story on UPS. Thanks for covering the charts.